Testing, testing. Testing, testing. We will begin in approximately 7 minutes, so please type out any questions you have really quick that I could answer. Hello, everybody. So we will be doing a live stream on AP Microeconomics. Thank you guys for tuning in. And if you guys are on the Zomu website, you will be unable to mention live comments. But if you would head over to the YouTube page for Zomu EDU, watch the video there and you can give live critique, live questions, etc. So basic guideline of what we're about to do today is we will go over the basic concepts in microeconomics, and we will start from chapter 1, which is 8 to 14% of the test, and part 2, which is the majority of the test, supply, demand, consumer, producer, surplus, etc. And then we will continue to do monopoly, oligopoly, monopolistic competition. And then we'll go to part 3, factor markets, and then part 4, which is the market failure and the role of government. So without further ado, let's get started. So what I'm going to do is go through every single little detailed subtitle here. And for part A, scarcity. So what is scarcity? Scarcity, the definition of it is the lack of resources to accommodate every single person in the, let's say, country. So something that's scarce. You hear on the news about oil. Oil is often scarce right now because the supply of oil cannot sustain forever, basically. And what we have to do is allocate the resources efficiently or find alternative action or resource to make up for the lack of oil. So scarcity is the reason why there's so many markets, why there's prices for every single item, because not everybody can get the item they want. Choice is rather similar. You have a choice of the different varieties of goods that are in the market. You have Nike, you have Adidas, you have Under Armour. These all represent a separate choice that you can take when you're shopping for, let's say, clothes or shoes. Opportunity cost is something I'm going to cover a lot of because that's also what rational microeconomics will think about when they are purchasing or when they are selling. So opportunity cost, if you want to take some notes here, opportunity cost. Opportunity cost sets up the whole chapter, the economics test. Opportunity cost is to buy something, sorry for my handwriting, to buy something, you lose out on something else. Let's say you have an hour of time. Well, this hour you're watching this video, which is an hour that you could have been using to watch the NBA or watch the NFL. Instead of this hour, you're watching economics. And the reason you're watching economics is because you think that it's valuable to prepare for your AP exam. So that hour is used for something else rather than the other thing that you could have done. So let's take college, for example. To go to college, you're using up 4 years of time. You could have gone and found a job. That job would pay you a salary, and that salary is the thing that is lost when you go to college. That works the other way around as well. To go to find a job, that 4 years that you could have gone to college, you're getting paid. What you're losing when you get paid is the 4 years of education that could help you further along your career. So opportunity cost is something intangible or tangible that is lost when you do a certain action. Now remember, eating lunch or eating something like that is not an opportunity cost. Whether you eat at college or you eat at home, the amount of money that you're spending to eat, that happens either way. So it's not necessarily an opportunity cost. So every time you see opportunity cost, the go-to example is colleges and what you lose and what you gain from there. So now let's go to the production possibilities frontier. And I'll draw a graph for that as well. I'll draw a graph. Basically, all you want to know in the frontier is it's a graph. Remember to name the graph PPF. There is a little sloped, or the graph could be straight lined. I will talk about the slope in a second. So here, let's say you have cars, and here, let's say you have computers. I will abbreviate for short. Computers. It's the same on both sides. It can be the same, rather. So I will begin with discussing what the difference between a slope and a straight line is. So the slope means that there is an opportunity cost to buy the other good or to produce the other good. So this straight line right here, this straight line represents that when you use more resources to produce the other good, so if you take resources away from producing cars to produce more computers, you're not losing any efficiency. However, for the other idea, if you choose to not produce cars and to produce computers, you're losing the specialization, the resource to provide greater efficiency for the car. So it's sloped because it takes more car resources to produce a single computer as you move along the y-axis towards 0. So some simple ideas here. To be on the production possibilities frontier is to be really efficient. The maximizing, efficient. I spelled that wrong. I butchered that. Efficient. And if you're inside the frontier, that means you can either increase production of cars or computers or both. This means that you are not utilizing your resources to full effect. And if you are outside, well, this is technically impossible unless you have an increase of workers, something that will shift the supply to the right, or you partake in trade, which we will discuss later as well. And it's really the same on this graph. Just move it over, but remember what I said about the sloped line and the scarcity of resources. So that's the production possibilities frontier. We'll go to comparative advantage, absolute advantage, specialization, and trade. Like I said before, trade is extremely beneficial to both sides, to both countries that are partaking inside the trade. So when you trade, you're allowing each country to specialize in what's best for it. So one country could be better at producing cars, while the other country could be better at producing computers. This way, more computers will be produced and more cars can be produced. Then you can trade between the countries and gain vital resources, vital productions, and etc. So if you go to, so I'll draw a little graph here. I'll say it's China right here. And then we have, wait, no, that's not right. I will do, oh no. Really quick, delete that. So we have cars, we have trucks. Actually, I'll stick to computers because we just did that on the frontier. Computers, and then we have if I can find my here, the US, and we have China, which are two of the most prevalent traders in the world right now. Make sure you put some willingness into that test. So cars, let's say that US can produce 50 cars in, let's say, a given amount of time. So everybody's producing this in about 1 hour. The US can produce 50 cars. Obviously, this is scaled down. Computers, let's say, can produce 90 computers. China can produce, let's say, 100 cars, but only 30 computers. Obviously, this is not reality, but a key economic practice is to simplify the equations, simplify the tables to make it easier to understand. So let's find the absolute advantage. Absolute advantage is when one country produces more than the other country. Simply that. When one total is greater than the other total. So here you can see that China has the absolute advantage in cars. China absolute advantage in cars because obviously 100 is greater than 50. The total amount of cars produced by China is greater than the total amount of cars produced by the US. And the same can be said for computers, which the US has the absolute advantage in computers. So the US produces 90 to China's 30. That's an absolute advantage right there. So now comparative advantage is the key that relies on trade. When one country has a comparative advantage, the other in one good, the other country has the comparative advantage in the other good. So absolute advantage basically does not affect whether a country trades or does not trade. And we will find comparative advantage right now. So advantage in cars. How do you find that? To do this, you have to find the opportunity cost to produce that good. So the opportunity cost, the opportunity cost to produce cars, I'll actually make this 45 to make the equations easier. I'll make this 45. There, 45, so I can do 1/2 and etc. So to produce one car, divide this by 45, divide this by 45. To produce one car, it takes up 2 computers. So 2 computers per car. Now, find the reciprocal for computers because when you find one side, just find the reciprocal and you can get the others. Reciprocal 1 over the number, which is 1 over 2. And that's half a car per 1 computer produced. To do this mathematically, you could start from the computer side, but you would do 90 divided by 90, which is 1, to get 1 car. And then 45 divided by 90, cars per computer. 45 divided by 90 equals 1/2 cars. So to produce 1 computer, it takes half a car. China, I'll just round numbers here. To produce one car, divide by 100. Divide this by 100. Let's say it's about 1/3 computer per 1 car. And find the reciprocal again, 3 cars to produce 1 computer. Now do mathematically for computer again, 30 divided by 30, 100 divided by 30, that's 3. So that's 3 cars per computer. So now find the comparative advantage. The comparative advantage goes to the country that has the lowest opportunity cost to produce the good. So China, as you can see, has the comparative advantage in producing cars. For every car they produce, it only costs them 1/3 of a computer. However, for the US, for every car they produce, it takes them 2 computers. So they're losing out on those computers that could be produced. Oh, did I just write cars? Oh wait, that's not cars. It's China. Sorry. And then the comparative advantage for computers, that goes to the United States because to produce 1 computer, it only takes half a car, while for China to produce 1 computer, it takes 3 cars. And that's a major discrepancy. Now let's find how to trade. You find the lower value. To trade for cars, you find the lower value to the higher value. So 1/3 less than x less than 2. That's for cars. It must be within this range or it will be inefficient. And then 1/2 less than x less than 3. So within this range for computers, or it will be inefficient. So you can trade 1 car for 3 computers, 2 cars for half a computer. That all fits within the range. So that's comparative advantage, absolute advantage. C is done for now. Just remember that comparative advantage is extremely important when you're deciding to choose between trading or not. And economic systems, well, there's a couple. There's markets. There's markets, which is just which is what the United States really has. It allows the prices to control whether you buy or sell an item. There's the planner, the central planner. You can call it the command market. That's just like what China originally had, which had one social planner, which would mark out how much tea to produce, how much coffee to produce, how many cars to produce. But the majority of what we will talk about is based off of the markets and the free markets. And property rights and the role of incentives. So property rights is just private property versus public property. The house you are living in right now or the apartment you're living in right now, that's private property. And then public property is like the school, the community center, stuff like that. And incentives are extremely important because it influences one's decision to commit a certain action. So let's say you're going to buy medicine. What is an incentive to buy medicine? It makes you healthier. That incentive makes you want to buy medicine. Let's say we're talking about Jordans, $170 Jordans, or let's say $495 Lonzo 2s. What is an incentive to buy the shoe? In the case of Jordans, well, it's Michael Jordan. To buy the shoe, it's like you're part of the elite group that represents the Jordan brand. To buy a Lonzo 2s, I have no idea because that's overpriced, but there is an incentive. To buy the shoe, you become what LeVar Ball said. You become a big baller. You become part of a society. And this is not always intangible. It can be tangible. What is an incentive to buy, let's say, a pencil versus a pen? And the incentive is to erase what you're working on. There's also tax incentives to donate. When you donate, it'll decrease your taxes, the amount of money you have to pay, so it helps charity, and that's an incentive to donate. And marginal analysis is extremely important. It's extremely important for graphing and stuff like that. Marginal is basically every single person attends to the next unit produced. So if one company is producing goods and it's deciding when to stop producing, it looks at the marginal cost of the next item. So to produce one good, it might be like to produce one good, it might cost $3. To produce another good, the total cost might be $8. A third good, $15. And the marginal analysis is the next item up. How much it costs to find the next item, which in this case, 8 minus 3 equals 5. So that's marginal cost right there, which we'll go over more later. 15 minus 8 equals $7. So marginal analysis is basically the amount of money or the amounts of resources used to produce the next item. In rational economists, they will think at the margin because that is what most influences their next business decision. So that was part one. That was part one. That's 8 to 14% of your test. But now we go to the big meat, the 55 to 70% of your test. We have supply and demand, and that's basically the test itself, 15 to 20%. Supply and demand. So I will draw the graph for supply and demand. It's a cross, it's an X, supply, demand. This is price, this is quantity, and make the graph like supply versus demand or something like that. So supply and demand. What is supply and demand? Supply and demand is, is how much a firm or a person will produce or will sell due to a given price. And demand is how much a person will want to buy due to a given price again. So market equilibrium is right here where the supply and demand meets. And you draw a little dashed line to represent the quantity equilibrium, QE, and the price equilibrium, PE. And then you can see determinants of supply and demand, and this is what we'll talk about. Supply, what can shift supply? The amount of workers that you have can shift supply to the right. This is logical because when you have more workers producing more goods, there's a greater amount of output. So supply of goods shifts right. And remember, always find what happens to price and quantity, which we will discuss later as well. And something else that can shift supply is expectations. If you expect the price to be greater in the future, you want to sell less now and sell more later because you'll generate a greater profit in the future. If you find out that if you expect that the price is lower, then you'll sell more now and you'll sell less later because you want to maximize the price that you're selling at. So demand, something that can shift demand is taste change. If somehow apples become like cancer solvers or able to prevent diabetes, more people will want to buy apples. If bananas become less healthy, if they can cause a disease or a virus, demand shifts left. There's more of them above, and if you want to learn more, a couple of them are pretty logical, something that can force you to shift right or shift left. A basic outline is on the website for Zomu.edu. You can just check it out. It's pretty simple. It's just a few things that you need to memorize, a few things that you need to remember that can shift demand to the right or to the left. But there's one thing that does not shift demand or supply, and that's price. When price increases or decreases, it only changes the quantity demanded or the quantity supplied. So let's say that the price, the price increases to here. Well, you can see here, when price increases, the demand decreases. The quantity demand decreases. Don't say demand, the quantity demand decreases when the price increases because the quantity decreases. Also, the amount of sellers that are willing to sell, that increases to here because of the higher price, but there'll be a shortage because not everything can be sold. When price decreases, it's a different thing. More people want a cheaper good, but the sellers don't want to sell at such a low price because they're losing profits. So let's see what happens when demand or supply shifts right. Supply versus demand, quantity, price. Let's say that demand shifts right. What happens? Let's say that taste changes and more people want to buy apples because they become more healthier. Demand shifts to the right. Draw an arrow right here to signify the change. This is quantity 1 to quantity 2, which is the new equilibrium. We have price 1 versus price 2. Price 2 is important because it shows that the new equilibrium is a greater price and sells at a greater quantity. Think about it logically. When more people want a good, the sellers raise their prices. When less people want a good, the sellers decrease their prices. Because of time, I won't go over every single change or every single shift, but when you shift, just look at the axis. Just look at the axes. What changes? If supply shifts left right here, which is not really supposed to happen, but let's say it shifts left, look at the price. It jumps up, and the supply jumps down. So when the supply shifts left, the amount of money it costs to produce or to buy that certain good increases, and the quantity decreases because there's not enough supply to fill off the market. So that's graphing for supply and demand. Don't worry, there's more graphing later. You'll start to hate it. There's price and quantity controls. That's what we just discussed, how price can affect supply and demand. Higher price, more people want to sell, less people want to buy. Lower price, more people want to buy, less people want to sell. Back to the shoe example. We have a $175 pair of Jordans and a $495 pair of Lonzos. Let's say that they were the same price. Let's say that the Lonzos were $175. More people would want to buy the good because it's cheaper. More people can afford. However, LeVar Ball doesn't want to sell as much because he won't gain that much profit. At $495, when LeVar sells one pair of shoes, that's $495 of revenue compared to $175. Of course, the seller would like to sell at a greater price, but the buyer does not want to spend the extra $320 to buy a pair of shoes. So we'll now go to elasticity, and that does have equations. Elasticity is the change in demand over the change in price. Change in demand over the change in price. So for a graph, if you want to know which one's elastic and which one's inelastic, kind of like that, the one that is more horizontal is always more elastic, and the one that's more vertical is always more inelastic. And we will prove this with math. So let's say that you have a price change, right? From a high price, it dips really far, it goes to a low price. Or actually, I'll do that the other way around. A low price goes to a really high price. What can people do? Well, an elastic line right here, this is very elastic. This is even more elastic, but we will go to that later. An elastic line, well, a change in price means a big change in quantity supplied in this case. It goes from here to here. This is a major difference. There's a huge change in demand for a single change in price. And then let's look at the demand right here, which is very inelastic. The most it can go is vertical, which again, I will talk about later. This is inelastic. And for this same change in price, there's only a small change in quantity, just this much. So the change in demand is a smaller value over the same change in price. So this is inelastic, and this is elastic. A short basis for inelastic or elastic is if the number is greater than 1, it's elastic. If the number is less than 1, it's inelastic. So we will talk about when it's vertical, completely vertical, or completely horizontal. Completely horizontal is perfectly elastic. This means that for one change in price, for any increase in price, everybody leaves the market. For any decrease in price, everybody buys the market completely. Of course, this is not likely to happen in real life because this is only like an extremity and nothing will actually be so specific on what will happen. But this is what economists want to think about when they're considering elasticities. Vertical is just the opposite. Vertical elasticity, that's perfectly inelastic. So for any change in price, nobody's going to leave and nobody's going to enter the market because it's inelastic. They won't change demand or they won't change price. And because of this, I will talk about the cross price elasticity. Just remember the equation for it and you'll basically be good to go. It's the change in quantity of good 1 over the change in price of good 2. This just shows which product is more elastic, which is more inelastic, and do the math. Greater than 1, again, it's elastic. Less than 1, not elastic. So next one, consumer surplus, producer surplus, and market efficiency. Delete this out. This is also part of the graph. So equilibrium price is this little dash, right? So the consumer surplus is above the price and below demand. So it's this triangle right here. This is consumer surplus. It's the amount that consumers are willing to pay minus the amount that they actually pay. Producer surplus is the amount that it actually costs to produce the good. So supply to price, which is the amounts of the amounts of money that it costs to sell the good. So it's like a profit. So it's like producer surplus, the amount of surplus you have. The more surplus, the better. So this maximizes efficiency because the most of the triangle is complete. If you have, let's say, if it's like this, there's less compared to a greater elasticity. There's more. Long story short, more elastic, more surplus. And tax incidence and deadweight loss. If there's a tax, it cuts off the amounts of surplus that you have. What it does is it increases prices. It forces the more elastic side to pay more for the good. So what happens is the market inefficiency that it causes, it creates a deadweight loss, which is a triangle. It can cause a little triangle right here because it decreases quantity, and this is the deadweight loss. This is the revenue for the government revenue, and this is consumer surplus again, above the price, below the demand curve. This is the price for the sellers, so below price and above supply. So that's producer surplus. Remember, deadweight loss is not a good thing because when you have it, it means not all of the gains to society are maximized. So not everybody gets the amount of the consumer surplus or producer surplus that they are deserving of. Delete this. So I'll go a little quicker now. I want to get to a practice test in the future, so we still have a lot to go. So, theory of consumer choice. This is also part of the test. Pretty big, 5 to 10%. Total utility is just how much satisfaction that someone receives. So to buy one good, you receive 5 units of happiness. You get about 5% happier. To buy the second of the same good, you get a little less happy, but you're still happy with the good. So now you're at 7. Buy another one, you're at 8. Buy another one, you're at 8.5, etc., etc., etc. So total utility, the more you have, usually means the better, but not always, because of marginal analysis and marginal utility. The marginal utility here is 2. So to get the next good, you're getting happier by 2%. Of course, the first good, 0 to 5, that's 5%. That's greater. It gets less as you go on because the more of the same thing you have, the less happy you get. The more sandwiches you have, I mean, the first sandwich you have when you're hungry, that's a very happy experience. When you get onto your 4th sandwich, you aren't as hungry anymore, so you won't be as happy as you were getting the first sandwich. So what this means is marginal utility, it decreases as it goes along. Now let's say that you have 2 goods. One good, you're at the marginal utility is for the third good is let's say 5, and for another good, let's say this is corn dogs, and this is hot dogs. For the marginal utility for corn dogs is 5, for hot dogs it's 7. What do you do from here? Money to buy goods with. What do? You look at which one has the higher marginal utility, or which one has the greater utility comparison. Utility is basically the utility per price, utility per price. So let's say this is $2. This is 5 over 2. Let's say this is $4, 7 over 4. As you can see from here, the marginal utility right here is greater per price. It's 2.5, and here it's 1.75. So how do you raise your utility? Well, you buy more of the good that you're happier with, or that you're sad with currently. So you buy more hot dogs and you buy less corn dogs. So you reach an equilibrium point, right? To maximize total utility, you want to be at a point where you're happiest at every single item. So you can get the most marginal utility out of either item that you're getting. So corn dogs, you're trying to increase. You're trying to buy more. You're trying to buy less. You're trying to buy less. Get a little happier. Corn dogs, you're trying to buy more to reach the same number. When you reach the same number, that's when you reach the maximizing utility value. And that's utility maximization right here. Marginal utility per dollar. you want to make these two equal. Remember, these two must be equal. The lower number buy less of, because as you can see here, as you buy more of the good, right here, as you buy more of the good, you're getting less. So you want to move back. You want to scale back your purchases. So this is a higher number per price. Does that make sense? Is there anything that I could go over? Just let me know in the live chats on YouTube. Also, if you're just tuning in, this video will be up later, so you can watch the beginnings of it as well. Moving along here, individual and market demand curves. This is pretty simple. Curve, let's say it's my demand for, let's say the market for shoes. How much I want to buy, how much I want to sell. The market is just everybody's demand and everybody's supply combined together. So instead of 5 and 10, this might be 500 and 1,000. To find this, use horizontal summation. Horizontal summation. What you do is that you basically add all of the individual markets. So individual 5, let's say someone else is also 5 plus 5. Add them all together to get market. And it's the same with price and quantity. It's the same. Price stays the same, of course. Actually, I should change it to 1,000. That's wrong. This should be 10 still. You just add the values together. Let's say for clothes, let's say it's a country of 2 people. I want to buy 2. My quantity is 2. Someone else's quantity is 4. The market would be 6. Just simple addition, horizontal summation. Just know it, and yeah, that's basically it. Next one, income and substitution effects. This is also a few questions on the test, of course. Income effect. If it's a normal good, of course, I will go over that really quick. Normal good is a good that when your income increases, you want to buy more of the normal good. And there's the other good, normal good, and there's another good. Oh crap, I forgot the name of it. Normal good versus inferior good. Okay, yeah, inferior good. Inferior good. Sorry, I just forgot the vocab for a second. Inferior good, when your income decreases, the demand for inferior goods increases. So like bus rides, that's an inferior good. If your income decreases, you want to have more bus rides. Normal good is a car, let's say a car or a truck. When your income increases, you have more money, you want to buy more of the cars, more of the trucks, so that's a normal good. The income effect is really what happens when what happens to the good when your income increases or decreases. So let's say you have more money, what happens to the good? When you have more money, you want to buy more. When you have less money, you want to buy less for a normal good. When you have more money, when you have less money, you want to buy more of the inferior good. When you have more money, you want to buy less of the inferior good and more of the normal good. Just think about that for a little bit. Example, cars, normal good. Income increases. What's the income effect? The car will increase. The consumption of cars will increase. So that's a normal good. Inferior good is a bus ride. Bus ride. If your income decreases, you want to have more bus rides. So basically, remember this RN, rich wants normal, rich people want normals, and then poor pi wants, poor people wants more inferior goods. Next one, substitution effects. Substitution is really when you have 2 goods and you're trying to decide whether to buy one or the other. So you have 2 goods, right? You have 2 goods. Let's say you have apples. What? Apples and oranges. Here you want to buy. So if the price of the apples goes up, well, if price goes up for apples, you don't want to buy as many apples and you'll just buy oranges because it's a substitute. It's also a fruit. You'll buy more oranges. So consumption, quantity of oranges goes up. When the price of oranges goes up, well, less people want oranges and more people want apples because it's cheaper. So more people buy apples. The quantity of apples goes up. So it's basically when one good increases, the other good gets more consumption because it's cheaper relative to the first good. That's substitution. There's also substitution versus substitution. Really quick, economics. Substitution versus income. So income effects, I will go over really quick. Oh no, substitution. Oh no, substitution versus. I'll go over a sec. Substitution versus comma. I forgot the other word for it. Sorry, really quick. Microeconomics, substitution, and complements. There we go. Complements is when one good helps the other good. So you have one good, you have let's say carrots. You have carrots, and then you have ranch. So when you have carrots, let's say the price of carrots goes up. Well, less people want ranch because to use ranch, you have to have carrots. That's taste issues. So when you want more carrots, when the price of carrots goes up, you want less ranch. So consumption of ranch goes down. Now, this is different from the substitution because substitution one item can be compared to the other item. One item is similar to the other item, so they don't really have to buy the first item. In complementary items, you need to buy the first item, so you need to buy that item. So carrots, you have to buy carrots to use ranch, so they're interconnected while the other is separate. So when you buy more of the one, you buy less of the other. More apples, less oranges. Okay, and then we'll go on to marginal product. Let's go on to production and cost. Production functions, short run and long run. Marginal product diminishing returns. So marginal product is how much the worker will produce. So how much the next worker will produce of the same good. So when you have let's say Bob's company, Bob's farm, your first worker will produce 40 goods. Second worker will produce 60 goods. Third worker will produce 20 goods. No, that doesn't make sense. Total of 75 goods. This is total, remember. This is total production. Fourth worker will produce 80 goods. Your marginal product. 2, it's 20. 2 to 3, marginal product is 15. The next one up, 4 compared to 3 is 5. Now, there is diminishing marginal returns, which means that the more workers you have, the less marginal product, diminishing marginal product. The more workers you have, the less product is being produced per worker. Why does this occur? When you have 3 workers on a farm, each worker can complete its work at the same amount of time, but it's more efficient because you won't have to pay the worker. However, when you have more workers, it's less efficient. They can't use their scythes or their tractors. There's only 3 tractors. How could you have 4 people using 3 tractors? So the fourth person will produce less than the third person would have produced. And then there's short run costs. Short run costs are the variable costs. Usually, short run costs include the payment for a worker. Long run costs, the fixed costs, it means like long run costs could be variable as well. It's the cost for the rents, for stuff like that, for long-term workers, for stuff that's long-term. Short-term is really just a quick, let's say $5 rents for a month, and then you move out or something. That's short run. Long run, extended period of time, something you have to pay for a long time. Then there's economies of scale. Economies of scale is I guess I'll show you the whole graph for scale. There's this. It's this. This is economies of scale. This is returns of scale, and this is economies of scale. Economies of scale is most efficient because you're getting most product per price. And just remember that it won't be much on the test, but just remember that economies of scale is good. And when you have economies of scale, you should produce more because your marginal product is greater than your marginal cost, and you need to produce more of the good. It's more efficient. Input combination. That's when average total cost is at its minimum. For a graph, let's say this is ATC, average total cost. When your average total cost is at its minimum, it's called the efficient scale. Efficient scale. And this is when the cost is the lowest. Of course, you can see at the graph, the average total cost to produce this amount of good is the lowest. It's not here, which is greater, or here. It's at its lowest point. Of course, this does not always mean that it's at its most efficient. Most efficient transition to that is when MR equals MC. Remember this, MR equals MC. When marginal revenue, the amount of revenue you get for the next unit of input equals the marginal cost, the cost for the next unit of input. That's your maximizing. That's when you maximize your, again, the graph, marginal cost. Let's say supply is technically marginal cost, demand, marginal revenue. When these intersect, right here. That's when it's most efficient. Of course, as we saw in the regular supply and demand curve, equilibrium point is at its profit maximizing point. Accounting profit versus economic profit. Pretty simple stuff. Accounting profit is just the explicit cost. It doesn't include opportunity cost. It just costs. It just counts the amount of cost for like buying some wood, buying some inputs of production. While there's also the economic cost, which is the total cost for implicit and explicit. So it's like what you miss out on. So instead of working for Google, you're working for Apple. What you lose for working at Apple. So that's explicit and implicit costs. Usually there's zero economic profit, which is normal profit, zero economic profit. That's when companies are at long run equilibrium. I'm getting ahead of myself right now, but it's for the monopoly. It'll produce right here. Actually, I shouldn't do that yet. It'll produce where the economic profits are at zero. So there's still zero economic profit. They're still in the market because they're still making implicit profits, but total accounting is at zero. So just so long as sorry for the coughing. Just so long as their revenues equals their explicit costs. Perfect competition, we went over that. Profit maximizing. It's just a simple little supply and demand curve. Equilibrium, profit maximizing, MC equals MR. Short run supply and shutdown decision. This occurs when the in the short run, your cost to sustain your average variable cost is less than your price, or is greater than your price. The amount of cost to produce the next good is greater than the price that you're selling at. You're losing revenue. That means you need to shut down. Long run exits. When your marginal revenue or your price is less than your average total cost. That means you need to exit the market. You're losing revenue. You're losing things that you need to continue producing. So exit the market. Go a little quicker here. There's still a lot to get over. Behaviors in the long run, the short run. Long run, it's more elastic. You can leave the market, you can enter the market because you have more capital. Short run, you're stuck by what the price regulates. Efficiency and perfect competition. Perfect competition is the most efficient because your triangle, this triangle is maximized. You'll see in the next graphs where it's not maximized, monopoly, oligopoly, monopolistic competition. The triangle is not maximized. So, monopolies. We'll go to monopolies. I'll draw the graph for the monopoly. It's this is marginal revenue. This is demand, marginal cost, price, quantity. Sources of market power. How does a monopoly gain its power? There's a document online at zomo.edu.com. Check it out. It tells you more about it, but I'll go over a couple. There's a limited amount of resources. So only one good can maximize its profits because there's a certain amount of goods that are out there. Let's say there's diamonds, the Beers Diamond Company. That one company maximizes or utilizes almost all of the diamond resources on Earth. It basically mines all the diamonds on Earth, so the other companies, they can't get the same diamonds because that one company already took away all the diamond mining. Another source of power, it's called a national monopoly. When the second company enters the market, it decreases both companies' profits. So, like, let's say you have one bridge that's pretty open. There's no traffic. There's one bridge, and it's a toll road. So, for one company to host it, they're earning profit, right? They're earning profit. But for the next company to come in and make a second bridge, well, the cost to produce the second bridge won't realize the same amount of profit because now you're splitting the revenue stream. There's two bridges. One person could go to one bridge. The next person could go to the other bridge. It just doesn't make sense. You could use that capital to produce something else. So inefficiency of monopolies. Remember that you're supposed to produce where marginal cost equals demand. So this is marginal cost. Let's say it equals supply in the market. So you're supposed to produce here, right? This is the quantity equilibrium. So when MC equals MR, this is where the profit's maximized. As you can see, there's a lower quantity. Quantity profit maximization, QM, is greater than quantity equilibrium. It's inefficient. Not everybody who wants to buy the good can get the good because the price is too high. Remember, the price is at its demand curve. When it's right here, the price is up here. So these people do not want to buy the good. That's where the inefficiency comes from. To make it more efficient, you just need the monopoly to produce more goods, to produce more of the item. Price discrimination occurs because there's a monopoly. They can differentiate groups of people into two separates. So let's say you're selling a book in Canada and you're selling a book in America. America loves your writings. More people will be there to buy the book. Canada, less people want it, less people will buy the book. Then you can set a higher price for America and a lower price for Canada. That's where price discrimination comes from. Natural monopoly, I went over that with the bridge example. It's when two firms enter the market instead of one, so it decreases profits. So when there's one company, it's more profits, there's more revenue, but when two companies come in, there's less profit, there's less revenue, so the other company won't come in. It just costs too much to match up with that single good. Check up here really quick. Okay. So next one, we will go to oligopoly. It's kind of the same thing. There's just two instead of one. There's two firms instead of one firm. Really, what happens is There's two firms that try to act as the monopoly, try to act to make the most amount of profit. Interdependence is when they depend on each other for collusion. Cartels, when the two firms work together. So remember the monopoly graph where this is demand, this is marginal revenue, and this is marginal cost. They're producing here. Maximize revenue. When you have two firms, 2 is greater than 1, so they'll most likely produce more goods. They'll produce somewhere here. Not at the equilibrium point because they don't want to lose that much profit, but they will produce here. But it's still greater than the quantity for the monopoly. So in a way, it's better for society, but also in a way, it's worse for the cartel. It's worse for the firms itself. Now, these two firms, let's say Joe and Jane, can work together, make a cartel. They could decrease their quantity. When they decrease their quantity, they're at the monopoly quantity. When MC equals MR, when profit is maximized. That is basically when everybody is happy. So let's go over the game theory and strategic behavior. Let's say you have firm A, firm B, produce more, produce less, produce more, produce less. So when firm B produces more and firm A produces more, they're both at $100 each. $100 a pair. When they both produce less, well, remember, they're at monopoly. They're at the monopoly production of quantities. That means they make more. Let's say they make 500 and 500. Now, when firm B produces more and firm A produces less, well, that means that firm B has a greater market share of the economy. They are a major factor in the economy. They are producing more at the same price or at a little bit lower price. So here, not 900. However, the other company has a lower market share. They're at 50. Same thing the other way around, 50, 900. So this produces the dilemma. And it produces the strategic ways while one firm will do when the other firm won't. So firm B, let's consider firm B's action. What's its dominant strategy? Its dominant strategy is something that it will do regardless of what the other company does. So firm B will definitely produce more. Let's say firm A produces less. If firm B produces more, they're at $900. Well, if firm A produces more, if firm B produces more, it's better than firm B producing less because they're earning $100 instead of $50. That's its dominant strategy. So where a cartel comes from is when they work together. When they work together and set the price lower, they're both at 500. But because firms can't trust each other, they produce more and they reach a lower profit. So of course, after many times of the cycle, when they keep knowing that the other person will produce more and more, they might just make a rule that they have to follow, or they'll be penalized to produce less to increase profits. Again, you can see from here where the inefficiency comes from. There's a less quantity produced, lower quantity produced. So next, we'll go over monopolistic competition. It's kind of like perfect competition, but here there's still a lot of firms. But the difference is the products are different, and they have to advertise to show the differences of their products. They're trying to show that, well, our products aren't the same as another company's products. We're a little bit different. And profit maximization, it's still the equilibrium because there's too many firms. When there's a profit, firms enter. When there's a loss, firms exit. Short run and long run equilibrium. That's really pretty simple. Short run, they're making a profit or they're having a loss. Long run, they're at zero sum, zero economic profits. The amount of money they make is the amount of money it costs to sustain the company. Excess capacity and inefficiency. There's still inefficiency because they're still not producing at the complete perfect competition level. There's still a bit that's lacking. They could produce a little bit of more, and then more demand, more consumers could buy it, because there's still a little bit of a monopoly in there. There's still differentiated products. So derived factor demand. Where does this come from? Derived demand is the demand for workers. So if the demand for workers is high, the demand in the market is greater. So when more people want to buy the good, the firm will want to buy or want to hire more workers. So that demand for workers comes from the demand for the products. That's where the worker demand is coming from. Marginal revenue product is the amount of product that each additional worker can produce. Marginal revenue product, that also derives from the demand for workers, because more demand for workers means that there's a greater marginal revenue product. Each worker is producing more. Labor markets and the firm's hiring of labor. So labor markets, they'll just work together. It's kind of the same thing as derived demand. How much they want to pay for a worker, it depends on their marginal revenue product. If MRP is greater, they'll want to buy more workers. If it's less, they won't. Market distribution of income. You're distributing income between groups of people. You're distributing income among the workers. It's a pretty simple concept. The main part here is the derived factor demand. Greater marginal revenue product means that each worker is producing more, which means that more companies want to get more workers to produce more goods. Now, market failure and the role of governments. Pretty quick here. Marginal society benefit and marginal cost. So if there's an externality, what an externality means is that there's an effect on a bystander. So if you're buying a good or you're selling a good and it creates pollution, it decreases social efficiency because, well, other people are getting the pollution, getting lung cancer. That's not a good thing. That's a negative externality. Positive externality, of course, is the opposite. Let's say you have vaccines or you have education, research. When one person researches about a new vaccine, more people can benefit because the planet gets healthier. More people are healthy from that single person's research. So that's a positive externality. Remedies, the government could subsidize or the government could tax, negative externality. Right now, there's a lot of pollution permits. It regulates the amount of pollution you're allowed to produce. And there's also there's pollution, and then there's the tax subsidies to enforce and generate more positive externalities. There's also the patent. It encourages productions because when you produce an innovative design, nobody else can take it. That's yours for 20 years, and you can take all the revenue. So now let's talk about the public good versus the private good. Public goods, well, they're not excludable, non-rival. You can't prevent somebody from using it, and you can't prevent somebody from using it at the same time as you. So, simple one, public defense. When one person receives the defense, the other person can't be blocked from receiving the defense. It's a national defense. When the US produces missile defense systems, well, when one person gets the defense, the other person won't lose it. And then we have private goods, excludable and rival. So when you have the private goods, it could be like chips. You're allowed to block it. Like the company can block you from buying it. They can ban you from the store. They can ban you from buying the good. And if one person buys that bag of chips, the other person can't buy the same bag of chips. It's not possible. It's going in their stomach. The other person can't buy it. And then we'll go to public policy to promote competition. Really quick, there's also, for public goods, there's a free rider problem if you can't exclude. the reason they make public goods is if you can't exclude someone from using your product and you're charging people to use the product, other people can just slide in and use the product because you can't prevent them from using it. So that's why they made public goods so that everybody can use it. So they use tax money. Antitrust policy. This is to prevent monopolies. Antitrust policies prevents multiple groups from combining. And it's also regulation. It doesn't want large corporations like Microsoft and Intuit. It was in 1990 something when the two giants wanted to combine. Too much market share will be part of one company, so there's less profit, there's less efficiency because they'll decrease quantity. Decreased quantity means less people make profits. Now, last one, income distribution. It's a small part of the test, extremely small. Income inequality could come from gender discrimination. I like you more than I like someone else. I like Caucasians more than I like Asians or something like that. It could come from discrimination, from race, from gender. I like boys more than girls. I like girls more than boys. It could come from what country you're from. I hate Europe, so I won't hire European employees. I won't hire those people. I'll just hire American-born people. Something else that could happen, intelligence. If you're smarter, I'll hire you. If you don't go past college, I won't hire you. So that's about it for the review. I will go to the test if you guys would like. So please let me know if you would like to see the test. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys got a review from it. If you need any more in-depth details, make sure you head over to the website that has more documents with more details. So again, thank you guys for watching, and I hope you really enjoyed this video. I thought it was informative. So thank you. This was our first live stream, and it was for microeconomics. Thank you.